In 1867, one of the strangest deals in history took place. Russia sold Alaska to the United States for just $7.2 million. At the time, many Americans mocked the purchase. Newspapers called it Seward's Folly or Seward's Icebox. People thought America had wasted millions on a frozen wilderness filled with snow, mountains, and polar bears. But today, Alaska is one of the most strategically important regions on Earth. It contains enormous reserves of oil and natural gas. It sits next to Russia and it gives the United States direct access to the Arctic. So, why would Russia willingly give away such a valuable territory? Was it a terrible mistake? Or was there a reason behind one of the history's greatest bargains? Alaska is America's largest state, covering more than 1.7 million square kilometers. It is larger than Texas, California, and Montana combined. Yet for more than a century, Alaska was part of the Russian Empire. Russian explorers first arrived in the 18th century, and by the early 1800s, Russia had established settlements throughout the region. But maintaining Alaska was far more difficult than owning it, and events thousands of kilometers away in Europe would ultimately convince Russia to let it go. During the 18th century, Russian explorers crossed Siberia and reached North America. They established trading posts and settlements. The primary objective was fur. Sea otter pelts were incredibly valuable and highly sought after in Europe and China. Through the Russian-American Company, Moscow built a small colonial empire. But unlike Britain or Spain, Russia lacked the population and naval power necessary to develop Alaska fully. The territory remained isolated and expensive to maintain. Between 1853 and 1856, Russia fought Britain, France, and the Ottoman Empire in the Crimean War. The conflict exploited Russia's weakness. Its economy suffered, its military fell behind Western Europe, and the war left the Russian treasury under enormous strain. Russian leaders realized that another conflict with Britain could be disastrous, and they feared that if war broke out again, Britain might simply seize Alaska from neighboring Canada. Russia could lose the territory and receive nothing in return. Alaska was incredibly difficult to defend. There were very few Russian settlers. Communication with St. Petersburg took months, and supplying the colony was expensive. From Russia's perspective, Alaska seemed more like a burden than an asset. Defending it against the British Royal Navy would have been nearly impossible. Russian officials concluded that selling Alaska made more sense than losing it in future war. Russia had several options, but one country stood out: the United States. Relations between Russia and America were surprisingly friendly. During the American Civil War, Russia had shown support for the Union, and both countries viewed Britain as a rival. Selling Alaska to the United States would strengthen a friendly power and weaken British influence in North America. In many ways, geopolitics shaped the deal more than economics. The architect of the deal was William Seward, America's Secretary of State. Seward strongly believed that America would eventually dominate North America and the Pacific. He saw Alaska as an opportunity. In 1867, negotiations were completed. The United States purchased Alaska for $7.2 million. That worked out to roughly 2 cents per acre, one of the cheapest land deals in history. Many Americans ridiculed the purchase. Newspapers described Alaska as Seward's Folly, Seward's Polar Bear Garden, or Seward's Icebox. People believed the land had little value, After all, who would want a frozen wasteland? For decades, Alaska received little attention, but the critics would eventually be proven wrong. Very wrong. In the late 19th century, gold was discovered in Alaska. Thousands of prospectors rushed north. The Klondike Gold Rush transformed the region. Suddenly, Alaska no longer looked worthless, and gold would only be the beginning. In 1968, enormous oil reserves were discovered at Prudhoe. Alaska became one of the America's most important energy producers. Today, Alaska contains vast oil reserves, natural gas, minerals, and fisheries. Its economy contributes billions of dollars to the United States. The territory, once mocked as worthless, became one of America's greatest assets. Geography makes Alaska incredibly important. At its closest point, Russia and Alaska are separated by just 85 kilometers. During the Cold War, Alaska became a critical military region. American radar stations and air bases monitored Soviet activity. Today, Alaska remains essential for missile defense, Arctic security, and power projection. As competition in the Arctic intensifies, Alaska's importance continues to grow. Looking back, it seems obvious that Russia made a terrible deal, but history is more complicated. Russian leader could not predict the gold discoveries, the oil reserves, the rise of the Arctic. At the time, Alaska appeared vulnerable and unprofitable. From their perspective, receiving money and strengthening ties with America seemed reasonable. The decision made sense in the 19th century, even if it looks disastrous today. So why did Russia sell Alaska? Because war had weakened the Russian Empire, because Alaska was expensive and difficult to defend, and because Russia feared losing it to Britain without compensation. What seemed like an insignificant transaction in 1867 would become one of the greatest bargains in history. And today, Alaska stands as a reminder that geography can transform even the most unlikely places into treasures.